Hello everyone and welcome to Outriders New Horizon. In today's video, we're going to explore an Anomaly Pyromancer build, which is one of the fastest one you can clear challenge tier 15 expedition solo, so it's a speedrunner, let's say, build, and it has very good potential to break all your records in no time. As always, I have a couple of suggestions to make some changes, invest something in survivability, although this functions much better as a glass cannon, because you clear the room so fast, you kill all the mobs very fast, it lags a little bit in single target DPS, however we can compensate for that with the mods for our secondary and sidearm. And without any further delay, let's have a closer look at the build. Let's begin with our skills. We're using Heatwave, Ash Blast and Overheat. Because we're using the Akari set, we need to use the Heatwave to boost our Anomaly power and burn the enemies. Ash Blast, thanks to our mods, we're going to deal massive amount of damage to elites and mobs while inflicting Ash. And Overheat is the main source of DPS to just finish everything off that is afflicted by burn and Ash, thanks to our mods. So let's have a closer look at the armor. We're using 3 pieces of the Akari, the chest, the legs and the boots, because these are the best combination to have the best cooldowns, because you see 8.6 seconds Ash Blast is our main DPS tool and burst damage skill. That's why we're using these 3 pieces. You will see everything in the background, so you can take a screenshot. However, let's have a closer look at one armor at a time. Beginning with our helmet, it's an epic piece. Both epic pieces have anomaly power, status power and cooldown reduction. Status power helps to keep enemies a little longer in Ash, and also vulnerability that we will apply thanks to the first 3. So Ash increase raise is a must, otherwise Ash Blast will not hit enemies across the map. And Fire Tsunami is also very useful because you will be able to hit a lot more enemies with a heat wave and get that precious anomaly power boost that we desperately need. For the chest piece, we're using the armor of the Akari with Detonator and Captain Hunter because we desperately need a little single target DPS increase against elites and bosses, because that's the only thing that this spec lacks. For the legs, we're using the waistcloth of the Akari with Anomaly Echo, that it's the best mode between the two that's available, and we replace the second one with Ride the Wave because we need 2 hit waves in order to make sure we hit enough enemies, burn them and deal enormous amount of damage. For the gloves, we're using an epic piece with Burnout and Ashen Boost. This way, the elites that we hit with a hit wave will take 25% more damage, and enemies afflicted by Ash will take 20% more damage, resulting in very high burst damage and defeating everything in the map. That's why we have many percentage increased damage for most of our mods, and that's why we can one-shot most of the things. Finally, the boots of the Akari is the only piece with max health, however, it's the only other piece that has cooldown reduction, and that's why we have the best cooldowns possible with this type of armor. And we're using the Master Consumer. Thanks to that, enemies that are afflicted with Burn and Ash will take 150% extra damage, or we can just destroy the enemies that are afflicted only with Ash thanks to Death Sentence. They will take 30% extra anomaly damage for 8 seconds, so this can be up 24/7 because we have 8.9 seconds, 8.6 seconds I think cooldown, and this has 8 second duration, so it's a very useful DPS increase tool. Now let's move on to the weapons. The one that has the best potential for the fastest time, for the speedruns and everything, as long as you're not fighting very high health bosses, although you can compensate a little bit, is the Funeral Pyre with Shadow Comment default and Claymore Torrent. Because I don't know if this is a bug, when you hip fire, you can damage multiple enemies multiple times, so you will see that you can proc the Death Sentence and you can destroy elites without overheat. Only the Heat Wave, Death Sentence and a couple of Funeral Pyre procs, you will be able to devastate everything very fast. That being said, this can get tricky because if you fight bosses 1 versus 1, it's not as good. If the boss is close by to other enemies, you will take extra damage. This is when you get a little more experience to use the Funeral Pyre. It's for the glass cannon completely, let's say, build. For the secondary weapon, we're using the guillotine, of course, or the Anomaly shotgun with Radiation Splash and Morning Winds, because we need that extra burst damage when we have the Death Sentence, and this can one-shot pretty much any elite that is afflicted with Death Sentence. And for the sidearm, we're using something with Kinetic Stomp and Storm Whip. You have to go closer in order to proc it, but that's an extra thing you can do in some occasions. You won't need to proc it as often, but it's good to have it just when you fight some bosses. Now that being said, my favorite weapon without hindering so much the times is Damascus Offering with Claymore Torrent and Fortress. Now Fortress is a little tricky. If you know how to use it, you won't lose so much time. You can see in the background an example. I ran frontline 2 times, one with the best talents, with this gear, with a funeral pyre. I managed to do it in 5 minutes. I changed only the main weapon, I changed the spec to have a little more survivability just to test it out, with the Fortress and the Damascus Offering, and I did it in 5 minutes and 8 seconds by doing the similar, let's say, type of rotation or mistakes. Why the Fortress worked so good? It's because of the nature of our skills. Heatwave, you can start with it, but after that you can start firing and walking. And you can also proc the other 2 skills. Ash Blast and Overheat can be activated while shooting. So you don't have problem to activate the Fortress, you won't lose as much time because you can proc 2 out of 3 skills while shooting and while proccing Fortress. So in the end, what I do recommend for the weapons. The Funeral Pyre, as I told you, with the best spec, has the best potential when you learn the spawn points and kill the enemies for the fastest time, as long as you're not facing bosses. Otherwise, certain bosses, the Blood Merchant, Moloch is not as hard as the Blood Merchant because it has anomaly attacks, you can kite them, you can just make some things, but Blood Merchant charges this a lot of damage, physical damage, and it's very hard to tank him. However, the Damascus Offering with a Fortress and another spec will help you tank him quite easier, although you will lose a little time because of the nature of the boss. But all the other expeditions that don't have bosses and only have Broodmothers, High Elites, I would recommend highly to go with a Funeral Pyre instead of the Damascus Offering. Let's have a closer look at the talents. So the first spec is the best because this way we have the best cooldowns for our skills, or Ash Blast to be precise, because the other skills have much less cooldown. Whatever we do, we haven't invested and you see anything else for the cooldown or the other skills for the Ignite or the explosive skills, but we desperately need to lower the cooldown of the Ash Blast. That's why this is the best spec. We take a lot of nodes that we won't take any advantage. We take the Hot Situation to increase our anomaly power by a lot. We take the Ashes to Ashes to inflict vulnerability to the enemies, the must needed Marble Orchant, 10% more damage against elites, and 2 other very special and important nodes, Trial of the Ashes and Trial of the Ashes, so another 25% for enemies afflicted by Ash. Now for the other talents, I'm not going to take any max health or lower the cooldown of the Heatwave, it doesn't matter. We are only using Heatwave to burn enemies and explode them before we use Ash Blast, so there's no point to lower any further the cooldown, but we will increase our DPS by investing more in the Tempest Tree for more anomaly power, more damage against marked enemies, and then Wildfire to take the maximum possible nodes to decrease the cooldown for our skills. This is the second build, the Survivability. We don't use so much damage as you think because I did the front line in 5 minutes and 8 seconds using this and Damascus Offering. So as long as you know the level, you know the spawn points, this won't lose as much time, but will help you survive quite easier against bosses because we have a lot more health and we have fuel for the embers. Whenever you go below 30% health, you will double the skill life leads, deal extra burn to enemies. That's why I got the warm up instead of the unquenchable. We want to inflict burn to enemies as often as possible, increase our survivability. We also have the hot situation and we have the magma elemental. That's why I think we don't lose so much DPS. We have 45% extra resistance piercing, and that will help us deal a huge amount of damage. That being said, I do believe you have to run the Damascus Offering with this build because we need the 30% extra damage against everything and we need the extra skill life leads to have extra survivability. Otherwise, I think you won't be able to one-shot some alphas or other enemies without the fortress. And this is the second chances build. It's very powerful because we invest in Tempestry, we have a lot more anomaly power compared to the other builds, but I forgot to mention the Firestorm build has the same problem with the Tempestry. We don't have any burst DPS against the mobs, and we have the worst possible cooldown for Ash Blast. We have 10.5 seconds compared to the others that we have 8.6, so we save 2 seconds. That's massive. Because Ash Blast is our major DPS burst tool and we need to use it as often as possible. That being said, this works quite good. We have the finished nestling, that's why we have the second chance. We deal 30% more damage with overheat. We still have some of the cooldowns. We have, as you can see, a lot of more anomaly based power, but we don't have the hot situation. So it's balanced. It still works. It's quite good, but you will just rely on Phoenix Nestling to survive. You don't have more survivability compared to the Ashbreaker. After reviewing all three options, in my opinion, the Ashbreaking tree is the superior one for the best times because we have the best cooldown for the Ash Blast and we have the best burst damage against everything. The Firestorm build is the best to focus on survivability because you will have a lot more health, a lot of more sky life leads. You won't lose as much damage, but you lose a lot of more burst damage and the cooldown that we need for the Ash Blast. And I do recommend it for starters in case you try the Ashbreaker and you keep dying, just switch to the Firestorm and until you get used to the rotation and everything. And the Tempest tree, it functions similar to the Firestorm and a little similar to the Ashbreaker, but it has the same problem. It doesn't have the best cooldowns and for survivability it only has an extra life. The cooldown is very long, it's a 3 minutes cooldown. And because we do 5-minute expeditions, you won't take so much advantage of it, especially if you die in 3 minutes, then you cannot proc again. You will finish the expeditions before you get Phoenix Nestling back. Let's move on to the rotation. The first rotation is without using the fortress. It's pretty straightforward. We need to hit at least 6 enemies with a hit wave to get the maximum 100% increase of anomaly power. And then this is the little tricky part because you use Ash Blast. However, it doesn't reach its enemy instantly. If they're close by, it needs half a second. If the enemies are very far, almost across the map, it will need 1 or 2 seconds. So you need to be careful. In case you want to affect all of the map, you have to get used to a little bit how the Ash Blast works and wait so everyone is affected. After everything is affected, release overheat and you will be able to kill everything across the map. If some other survives and is close by, but it's affected by the death sentence, switch to your secondary weapon, it will die. If something else survives, switch to the sidearm and it will die. The second rotation is while using the fortress. We once again open with Heatwave. If you don't face elites, you don't need to proc fortress. Everything can die as long as you get the maximum anomaly power boost by following up with an Ash Blast and an overheat. However, when you face elites, you have to proc the fortress. You will do that. After the heat wave, you can wait 1 second for everything to take in position. You can start shooting and fortress will need 1 to 2 seconds. Between the seconds, you will be able to activate Ash Blast while shooting. You don't have to stop. And also after 1 second, you will activate overheat. Let's move on to some tips when using the build. You have to get familiar with each and every expedition in case you want to maximize your times. This build is capable of clearing out whole maps very easily as long as you do your rotation very quick. Normal enemies, you don't need to use Ash Blast to destroy them. You can use Heatwave and proc Funeral Pyre to destroy everything, as you can see the background. So you can save, for example, the second heat wave, Ash Blast and the overheat without the need to use the Funeral Pyre once again in order to save a lot of time. So what are the advantages and disadvantages while using the build? It's one of the fastest build to clear out Challenge Tier 15 expeditions fast. It destroys whole maps, destroys elites and most of the enemies. However, it does lack and has only one disadvantage. It doesn't have as good single target DPS against bosses with high health and has a little problem while facing bosses that deal physical damage, such as the Blood Merchant. You have to kite him, you have to make sure he keeps burning, otherwise it's quite hard to destroy him. He has a lot of health, and because we don't have the old 3 morning winds, we cannot just burst him down. We have to be a little more clever, otherwise he can one-shot you pretty easily. And the other thing, any alpha can one-shot you, so it's very high risk, high reward. So a very powerful glass cannon as it is. You cannot invest in defensive modes, otherwise you will lose a lot of damage and you won't be able to one-shot everything and you will lose the point of you having this build. And that was it for today's video. I really hope this will help you to make your own build for solo challenge tier 15 expedition, to break your own records in no time. Don't worry about it, you just need a little practice to see the records breaking and just farm them, speedrun them, have fun, destroy everything, as long as you're a little careful when facing the bosses. So feel free to like if you liked, and you can subscribe for more upcoming videos for Outriders New Horizon and other video games. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.